We are going to continue our probability section with finding the probability of compound events. A compound event is a probability which consists of two or more events linked by the word and or the word or. When two events have no outcomes in common, the events are called mutually exclusive. So if A and B are mutually exclusive, then the probability of A and B occurring at the same time is equal to 0. So an example of that is the probability that a number is even and odd. A probability cannot be even and odd. Another example of that would be the probability that something you cooked, let's say soup, is hot and cold after a certain time period. All right. Hot and cold inherently are separate. If something is hot, then it is hot. If it is cold, it is cold. We typically do not see them occurring at the same time. So those would be examples of mutually exclusive events. Now the third thing is when two events have at least one event in common, they are overlapping events. So now let's work with some formulas for the probability of mutually exclusive events. So if A and B are mutually exclusive events, which means that they cannot occur at the same time, then the probability of A or B is equal to the probability of A plus the probability of B. And we've seen that before, we just didn't explicitly see the formula. Now we have the probability of overlapping events. If A and B are overlapping events, then the probability of A or B is equal to the probability of A plus the probability of B minus the probability of A and B. Because they overlap, we have to subtract out that overlapping portion. So those two formulas are going to be important. I would write those down so that you have them. And now let's do an example with them. Okay, so suppose you had a spinner that has 20 equal-sized sections numbered from 1 to 20. So we have a spinner, and I can't draw 20 sections, but the spinner looks like that, only with 20 sections, numbered 1 to 20. So what is the probability that you spin a 2 or a 5? Well, up here, they didn't say that any of the numbers repeat. So that means that there's only one of each number. So this probability of getting a 2 or a 5 is equal to the probability of getting 2 plus the probability of getting 5. 2 is going to occur once on the spinner. Same thing with 5. So we have it occurring once, and it's out of 20 numbers. So it's 1 out of 20 plus 1 out of 20 again. We have common denominators, so we can add the numerators. 1 plus 1 gives us 2 out of 20. And then we're going to reduce. We're going to reduce all our fractions today. even on the lesson check, you will end up reducing your fractions. So divide the numerator and the denominator by 2, and we get 1/10. Now there's another probability we need to find. What is the probability that you spin a number that is a multiple of 2 or a multiple of 5? So first we have to list the multiples of 2 all the way up to 20. So multiple of 2 is 2, 4, 6, 8. Multiples are anything that the number can divide into. So we're going bigger because 2 can divide into all of these. Then 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Then we need multiples of 5. So multiples of 5, you're thinking of numbers that 5 can divide into. So 5 can divide into 5. 5 can also divide into 10. 5 can divide into 15. And 5 can divide into 20. So we can divide, or those are all the multiples of 5. So remember that if we have repeat numbers or if we have overlapping events, the formula is probability multiple of 2 plus the probability of a multiple of 5 occurring minus the probability of both occurring at the same time. So we have the probability of the multiple of 2. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 numbers out of 20. And then we're going to add the amount of multiples of 5. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 out of 20. And then we're going to subtract out the ones that are overlapping. So take a look at both lists of numbers, the 5, 10, 15, 20, and then the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12. All of those numbers, any numbers that overlap, we're going to circle them. So I see 10 in both lists of numbers. I also see 20 in both lists of numbers. So those are overlapping, which means that we're going to subtract those back out. So 2 over 20. So now looking at these, we can combine the numerators. We can add these and then subtract 2. So 10 plus 4 is 14, minus 2 is 12 over 20. And remember, we are going to reduce these this time. So both numbers are divisible by 4. We're going to divide the numerator and the denominator by 4. And we are going to get an answer of 3/5. So the answer is 3/5. These next two examples deal with a standard die. So again, we could roll, when we roll a die, we could roll a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. We need to know what is the probability that you roll an even number or a number less than 4. So if we think about the even numbers on a die, that is 2, 4, 6. And then numbers less than 4, that's 1, 2, 3, and then we can't include 4 because we want everything that's less than 4. So now let's find the probabilities. Also take note if we have any numbers that overlap. So we're going to have the probability that it is even. And remember, die, we have 6 options. We have 6 different numbers we could possibly get. And then 3 of them are even. So that's 3 out of 6. Plus probability that we have less than 4. So looking at that, that is also 3 out of the 6 different numbers. But looking at our groups here, we do have numbers that overlap. We have one number that overlaps. So that means that we have to subtract something out. I'm going to erase these lists to give us more room. But you're going to subtract out the probability of both. So the probability that it's even and less than 4. And we knew that that was 2. So 2 occurred once on a die, so that's minus 1/6. So now add 3 plus 3, that's 6, minus 1, that's 5. And then denominators do not change when you're adding fractions. So there's a 5/6 probability that you could get an even number or a number less than 4. Now let's find the probability that you roll a 2 or an odd number. So probability that you roll a 2, well, there's only 1 2 on a die. And then odd numbers. Think about the odd numbers on a die. That's 1, 3, and 5. So we are going to have the probability of 2 plus the probability of an odd number. So there's only 1 2 on a die, so it's 1/6, plus we have 3 odd numbers out of 6 possible numbers. And then double check, is there any numbers overlapping? Well, I see a 2, 1, and a 3, and a 5. None of those overlap, so we don't have to subtract anything out. We can just add these two. 1 plus 3, which is 4 over 6. We need to reduce this. You'll need to reduce on your lesson check as well. You can divide the numerator and the denominator by 2. And if we do that, we get a fraction of 2/3. So the probability that you roll a 2 or an odd number is 2/3. Since we finished all the examples, now you have a chance to try these on your own.